Well, and that was one of our taglines we coined early on: emptying swear jars all around the country.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, this is back like 2020 in our early like Startup Accelerator pitch deck. It was like our closing is Flex Solutions, emptying swear jars all across the country, because those words start flying, the wrenches start flying, and money is getting hemorrhaged out of the company.
Okay, please never stop using that language. Never stop using that messaging. Clearly your messaging has to go much bigger and much more in depth to communicate the value solution, but for God's sake, don't ever stop using that messaging. Hey everybody, this is Chuck for the Revenue Fuel Podcast. I'm super psyched. We're in the shadow of my alma mater, Lehigh University, with my friend Matt Bilsky, who's also a Lehigh guy here, and we are in the lab today. Matt is a startup founder in robotics space, and the beautiful part is, and the reason why I love this, Matt, is because you have a new category of robots, and that is what this is what this is really about. So we think about, Terminator made it popular in the movies, but there's fixed robots, there's autonomous robots with the robot on legs nowadays, all these different applications. All those are intended to handle safety applications, productivity applications, and in a sense, they really replace people. But what I love about your category is handheld robots, is that it's the first robot designed to augment people. It's meant to be used with a person in mind, and actually with a person at the helm. So we are here in your lab. Thank you for joining me today, or I'm joining you here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah. Well, you gave me the tour, and I love it. I mean, you've got so much in this space. It's absolutely incredible. That's why I wanted to do it on site. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
And nice to meet you all, and thanks for joining us.
So how long have you been doing this?
So I've been working on the technology here for the better part of 10 years, but Flex itself has been around since the end of 2019. But I've always been this inventor, contractor, maintenance guy, and so I've probably been doing this my whole life.
Yeah, you told me a story about when you were younger about family-owned properties, or you worked for a guy who owned properties, and young guy is out doing maintenance on properties and using that mechanical knowledge. And if you spent the time walking around this building, like I spent the time walking around this building, you would be amazed that for a manufacturing geek like me, damn, I mean, this is just great. So
thank you, appreciate it.
So let's back up. How did you get this notion, this idea that you wanted to be a robotics designer?
Well, I would say I never wanted to be a robotics designer. I just wanted to solve the problems I faced every day.
Okay.
And the solution to those problems turned out to be a robotic technology. But
Got it.
My story, always was this inventor, handyman, contractor. But here at Lehigh, I moved into an off-campus house. And at the time I was going into my junior year, like, hey, you need some help fixing things? And no, they needed help scrubbing toilets. But guess what? It's money. So I showed up to start fixing them, or to start scrubbing, cleaning, and things were broken. And as you've alluded to, we probably had pretty much every tool here. I had the tools to fix them.
Yeah.
And so at the time, the guys, actually one of them's a Lehigh alum, and at the time they had about 8 houses, and over the next 5 years, I grew them to 35 properties in an apartment building. And we'd renovate every one, and every time we finish a renovation, they'd be like, hey, we forgot to run a wire. Do you mind? And I'm trying to earn my beer money and have time to spend it.
Right.
So while I'm really good at old work electric, and right now we're in a 100-plus-year-old home here, which is typical for South Bethlehem and frankly most of the United States. And the rest of the world's even older than we are.
Right.
So most of the buildings here are older and going to be here to come. So how do we address this issue of old work electric? And that's really where I set out of, I had an opportunity to get a free PhD, teach my way through, and invent some tech and own a company. And I said, running wires through walls sucks. So what if I invent a robot you could put in through an outlet-sized hole, have it drive through the wall, drill through every stud and joist, and pop out and pull the wires, no mess, no nothing. And that sounded pretty good. And my PhD advisor, who I found to guide me through my unconventional PhD, he was a union electrician when he was in grad school. And he told me the story of when he was in grad school, IBEW out in Newark, New Jersey. His job was to check for frostbite on people's fingers in the Newark airport parking lot 50 years ago.
Wow.
And he's like, I better go and get my degree and figure out how to not be checking for frostbite.
Right.
And so he got the concept immediately. And so it was definitely, I had this opportunity of working in it. And so, one of my expressions is the best person best suited to solve a problem is the one who experiences it every day.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, a lot of times that same person doesn't have the resources, the skills, or how to actually implement that solution. I mean, I've been very fortunate to experience these problems firsthand. But I also happen to have a PhD in designing robots that are affordable. And so the two kind of came together in the technologies we now know as the FlexBot, but definitely started in this construction real space, and it's been a bit of a journey till we met each other, and I'm sure we'll dive into that as we keep going.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. This is there's so many lessons here, from passion, solving problems, education, networking, self-taught, YouTube University, all these things that you've had to learn to do to go from essentially an undergrad who was cleaning toilets to a PhD from Lehigh University. By the way, recently voted number 14 school in the entire country by U.S. News and World Reports. We're very proud of that. So, you know, if you want to go to Lehigh, highly suggested. I know Matt agrees too. So.
Spent a decade of my life there, went undergrad through faculty, so I
yeah.
have a little bit of a relationship.
Yeah. Well, and I too, you know, my son is there just about to graduate and still trying to do volunteer work with the Industrial and Systems Engineer Department. Let's just say we like it there. So, you know, the universities have a great deal of resources. I mean, you know what? Let's talk about that for just a second, because you started this with a senior project. Is that what it was? Or
no,
was it a grad project?
Yeah, so I guess I can give a little bit of the story. You know, I, like most students, I guess, didn't even think about going to grad school. And then come my junior, senior year, met a faculty member who became my advisor in undergrad, because he was the first person to look at me and say, "You're what's called a mechatronics person." I'd always been building circuits. I'd always been making things, but neither of my parents were engineers, so people just told them he needs to go to engineering school, but none of us knew what that was. And then I had never heard the term mechatronics, and I think most of the world hasn't. And for those unaware, mechatronics is mechanical, electrical, and computer engineering all kind of combined. And so the way to describe that is a car is a mechatronic system. You can't just build the engine. You need the circuitry, the control computer.
Right.
And there's all these, there's more lines of code in a car right now than a 747. And so you have to have all three of those parts combined. And that's always been what I did, but now I learned the term. And you and I had some conversations before we got on camera about, for both of us in our educations, it was once we figured out the connection between who we were and what we were passionate about, that then gave us the context and the reason to pay attention and the reason to care. And so for me, it was this professor who was like, "Oh, you're a mechatronics person. Why don't you go to grad school?" Well, fortunately, he couldn't make grad school happen, but tried the conventional PhD, found an advisor who would pay my whole way. And I don't color in the lines, just not my forte, and wasn't my thing. And so had this opportunity at the end of my first year of grad school that realized they're paying me to teach. So as a grad student, you get your full tuition, full stipend as a teaching assistant. And I had this revelation that is still controversial in higher ed, but I asked, wait, if you're only allowed to work 20 hours a week and you're paying me my full tuition, full stipend for that, then any research I'm doing is volunteer.
Right.
So why am I volunteering to do what you told me to do? Why can't I do what I want to do? And I guess nobody ever asked that question before. And so I went out and I went to the head of the technical entrepreneurship program at Lehigh, John Oakes, who was a faculty member there, and I said, well, why can't I do what I want for my PhD and teach my way through? And he had controlled a TA-ship, and he, you know, and John, in his wisdom, he said, why can't you? But he made it very clear, I'm not your dad, I'm not your boss, I'm not your coach, I'm your advisor. I'll advise you through the process, but if you're going to be an entrepreneur and create your own journey, you got to run your own journey, right? I'm not going to drag you on your own wild adventure. And so I figured out a way basically that I would get this free PhD, but the kicker is I own all my patents because I was using resources available to all the students. I was teaching, not being paid as a researcher. I was writing economic development grants. Here in Bethlehem, we have you know, the Keystone Innovation Zone, and even the state of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, our DCED, Community Economic Development. They have a lot of great programs for entrepreneurs that I tapped into, and even some of the startup competitions at Lehigh, like getting a capstone design team. So that really afforded me, for basically 3 years of grad school, the opportunity to develop this technology. And then I stayed on as a faculty member for a couple of more years, which let me, I called it the Lehigh Accelerator, right? Because for startups, it's when you're pre-MVP, pre-prototype, any way to show what's stuck in my head, who's going to pay you for that?
Right.
How do you do that? And I tell everybody, go get a job. You'll meet some smart people, right? X blank and their coworkers start this company. It's a pretty good way to do it. I recommend that for those of you out there. But my life has been a series of happy accidents of, but as Chuck probably says on the rest of his podcast, you got to be there to win, right?
You got to show up. I mean, a big part of what I want to do, first of all, spend any time with Matt Bilsky. You'll know nobody has to drag Matt Bilsky along to do anything. And honestly, part of what I want to do with this, and the reason why I'm glad you went through that story, is I want us to inspire people. There are a lot of people that have great ideas. I will tell you that the two guys in a fraternity back in 1987, 88, probably drinking too much beer, had an idea for set-top box. All right? Because one of their fraternity brothers had to build a cable box as a project, and we started throwing around ideas. I was one of them. My friend Bill was the other.
Wow.
And we poo-pooed it in 1988 because technology just didn't exist. We couldn't have designed that. Bandwidth didn't exist. Hard drive storage space didn't. The enabling technologies didn't exist. But so many of you out there have ideas that may be ready for prime time. And it's my hope that your story can help to inspire them. And that's why I love the university element of this, because one of the greatest universities in the world, our favorite. And two,
not biased.
completely biased, proudly wear the brown and white. But there's so many people there who may have ideas, and indeed Lehigh University has resources between the mentorship programs for entrepreneurs and resources at the amazing Mountaintop campus and all this stuff. So we want to inspire you. And if it's not Lehigh University, it doesn't matter. This is where the future is built.
Well, and I want to build on that.
In the ideas, right? This is where the future is built.
I mean, first of all, if you read any of the job postings I put out there, and I think one of the big messages I want to put out is somebody with, I'll call it commas, right? Like, I have a PhD. I have a licensed PE professional engineer. But like when I put out a job posting, I say ideally you have a degree in somewhere from something, but the School of Hard Knocks is equally sufficient.
Amen, brother.
Because I really don't, and it's something I struggle with as a faculty member. I don't know what I said that was worth $85,000 a year to hear, but people were paying that, right? At the same time, here in Bethlehem, Lehigh Valley, you have the 11 Lehigh Valley schools. Northampton Community College is right here. On South Bethlehem, they have the Fowler Makerspace. Martin Guitar has a Luther school there. You can learn how to make guitars. There's a machine shop. Our intern right now, our assembly technician, he's a Northampton student. Amazing talent. So I think it's important that you don't have to go to the university or these things to go and pursue it. There are, unfortunately, and one of my shticks is there's normal, right? And we're not allowed to say that anymore, but normal is a mathematical concept.
Yes.
You have the stuff in the middle, and then the fallacy is saying abnormal is bad. Some abnormal is bad. But you also need abnormal like us to change the world.
That's right. That's
Right.
exactly
And
right.
so a lot of advice of if you go to college, things might be more linear in a path because that's the normal thing to do. But the fallacy is to not poo-poo being on either side of that as well.
And for all you people who didn't think you needed the statistics you learned in high school and college, in order to understand what Matt was just talking about, you need to understand a normal distribution.
I just draw the pretty picture. I don't get the stats, but I do get the concept of most people color in the lines.
Well, I think some of my industrial engineering and math professors would kick me in the shins if I didn't at this point. But so changing the world. That is what this is about. I mean, that's what.
Put some pressure on that.
Well, you brought it up, so that you brought the pressure on yourself. There are different ways to change the world, right? We think of changing the world as some massive global movement. It doesn't have to be a massive global movement. You can change someone's world. So whose world are you trying to change with FlexBot?
Yeah, for us, it's been a really interesting journey in answering that question, right? This product market fit question. And what I really realized is, as a superintendent of properties, I was a maintenance technician. I didn't know how to solve every problem. I know how to solve a lot of problems, but if something was really bad, we would triage it and, we need Roto-Rooter to come for this.
Yep.
We need the boiler technician to come in. And so where we've really, found our fit is in industrial facility maintenance technicians. So industrial facilities, think manufacturing, even think things like airport, these high availability places, downtime is really expensive.
Really expensive.
And to contextualize that, the average cost of downtime in a large manufacturer, $4,000 a minute. Which you're having a pretty bad day if each minute's like that. And so these maintenance techs are kind of have a dual mandate, right? In general, they're trying to reduce downtime. But how do they do that? Well, on the one side, there's preventative maintenance. There's going in and getting your oil changed, so to speak. And so wherever possible, trying to do checks regularly, find things before they go wrong. And again, I'm sure you've talked about this a lot on your podcast, Industry 4.0, this shift to predictive. So not only can I just swap out a motor once a year because it's here, can I listen to it and see vibrations? Can I use thermal cameras to see things? How can we predict with data what's going wrong? So they're trying to do this, and the kicker is most equipment was not made for them to get into it. And so getting in there is very difficult, and they have to take stuff out of service. So we're trying to make it so they can help prevent issues, but where we really shine is when things go wrong, right? When just everything's blowing up, and you're just trying to figure out, where should I set up my ladder? So how can I safely, without getting on a ladder, because ladders are actually the most dangerous thing in most workplaces, how can I safely diagnose this and do it quicker so that at least if I go, I know what tools to bring, know what part to order, I have everything ready to go when I do take this machine, or if I'm just trying to diagnose and get back quicker, how can I do that easily where I wasn't meant to fit?
Well, and let's not underscore the cost of downtime. These maintenance techs that you're talking about, they are oftentimes they're unicorns and they're hard to get. They have a skill set that is not in large supply. As soon as you put the word diagnose into the job requirements, you're talking about a different person.
Precisely.
Absolutely, positively. You're not talking about someone that was driving an Uber last week. Great, honest work, love it. Wouldn't want to do without them. But you're not going from that or low-level manufacturing skills right into the maintenance tech job.
It's an apprenticeship and
years of experience, lots of skills that cover a lot of different areas, very much in some cases like mechatronics, right?
Yeah.
In that it can really span those different things. And so the cost of downtime in that case is even greater.
Right, because you also have this, as you were saying, skill set, right? So either if that worker's not present, they don't have that skill set. If that worker's out sick or got hurt, they don't have that skill set. And you can't just order another one tomorrow, right? So we have this talent. And one of the big insights I've had is, and this is across many industries, back to that person knows what they need. This maintenance tech, I knew exactly where I was trying to go, but I couldn't get there. And I know what I'm trying to do when I get there, but I can't get there. So how do we bridge that gap? And that's really what we've set out to address is this notion of this worker has a skill. We want to get them there. We want to get them there safely, get them there faster, and really leverage that expertise. Not replace it, because frankly, it's not replaceable. And most of this equipment, we coined a term called the last meter, right? In warehousing and distribution, you might have heard last mile. Last mile delivery, that's where all the costs are. But if you look at most, going back to your planes, trains, and automobiles of technologies, like, oh, you could have a flying thing, you could have a legged thing, or a thing that drives around. It can get a lot of data. It can take the general information, but it can't get into that last meter. It can't get inside the machine. It can't get between two ducts that were like this and was never designed to go. But what if we had a 1-inch thing that you could put on the end of a pole and get up there and collect data and put different tools on the end? And really, that's been this insight that all the way back when I think about my journey from property manager who just needs to see inside something, in that case a wall, and a maintenance tech who just needs to see something, a piece of equipment that really wasn't designed for them to maintain. How do we address that? And that's what we really came out to do.
Yeah, and if you've ever spent time in a shop, I'd venture to say that the majority of the foul language used is when you have to get down on your back underneath something, try and reach, you can't get in there, you get hurt in the process, you're stretching, you're scraped, you even bleed a little bit. That's where the foul language comes. It's not always a pleasant experience. My wife doesn't even want me to do work in the house anymore because that's really just the experience, right?
Right.
Of course,
Well, and that was one of our taglines we coined early on. Emptying swear jars all around the country.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, no, this is back like 2020 in our early like Startup Accelerator pitch deck. It was like our closing is Flex Solutions, emptying swear jars all across the country, because those words start flying, the wrenches start flying, and money is getting hemorrhaged out of the company.
Okay, please never stop using that language. Never stop using that messaging. Clearly your messaging has to go much bigger and much more in depth to communicate the value solution, but for God's sake, don't ever stop using that messaging.
I'm glad to have an expert hit that home.
It cuts right to the point. All we need to know, wait a minute, swear jars, what? Whose swear jars? Well, not yours, because I don't think you're going to want one of these things. But I did tell you that I can envision a FlexBot in a home someday.
Yeah.
I could definitely envision a home. If you've ever had to get under a sink, it sucks, right?
Under a sink, or, I mean, some of the videos we have up of, this house, thankfully I rent, there was a leak. And guess what that leak was? Not good stuff. It was human waste and in a wall, and it was coming somewhere. We're able to find it, or our kitchen's always cold. We're able to go through the chases. So I probably get a couple emails a week of folks who want to look in their gutter. A lot of security installers, alarm system installers. And as I joke, how many of you bought a drone last year, flew it a couple of times?
Yeah.
I think this is as cool, if not cooler than that, and you don't need a pilot's license.
Exactly.
Well, you at home might not, but for the rest of the commercial world.
Well, as long as you don't fly it over 400 and some feet, I think the limit is, whatever the heck it is. So let's stop talking about it, because why don't you show it? Because this thing is like, do you ever wish you had a third hand, or you wish your fingers were just a little bit longer? Well, take that and put it on mechatronic steroids.
Thanks.
So, introducing the FlexBot.
Yeah, so this is the culmination of all those stories here. So this is one of our FlexBot links, and you can imagine 3 to 5 of these. But where we, as Chuck was saying with Handheld, I am waving a robot around right now, and I hand robots to people all the time and say, here, drive it. And so what the FlexBot is, a 1-inch diameter, snake-like robot, designed for maintenance techs, and basically anybody who's got to get into these hard-to-access places. They're able to insert it, and all of our links are able to move in 3D space, but they're also able to move in a single plane. So you can stay in those tight places. They all have cameras, lights, and again, imagine 3 to 5 of these, but not just handheld like this, on the end of a 30-foot pole. So I'm standing here, and I can get we've been in hangars of aircraft carriers, looking above ducts, or we've been in manufacturing equipment where there's a bunch of guards. Anytime that yellow door is open, you're not making money.
Amen.
And so can we figure out what the squeaky wheel is, all of that. So the technician is able to insert this. We are able to put different tools on the end. So we have cameras, thermal cameras, 360 cameras, even ways to 3D map. And then we also have microphones, finding leaks. A small pneumatic leak in a factory averages about $500 a year in wasted energy.
Wow.
Each one of those. Things like sprayers for finding leaks. We even made a caulk gun for the Department of Energy, showing how a cable company puts a hole in the side of your house, says, that hole is the equivalent of no insulation in your wall. So just being able to come in and caulk that. And so we've been working on as well, 2 big issues with robotics, not to mention the usability here, is they're really hard to use, right?
Yes.
You got and we live in this time of staffing shortage.
Yes.
And statistically speaking, this great worker you hired today is probably quitting in a month.
Very, very possible. Attrition is a problem.
Right. And so you're going to spend all this money training them on a new technology, which just means it collects dust.
Indeed.
So, 2 of the big revelations I had, one was around, robotics needs to be affordable and easy to use if it's going to be adopted. And so that's where we've been working a lot on, how do I just hand this to somebody and they just pick it up and use it? So you have a camera on the end and you're able to insert it, but imagine a self-bending push rod. So as you insert this, because it's a robot, the links can automatically bend to avoid those obstacles. So it's as intuitive as you would think it would be. And so we don't have to train you in all of that. And then in terms of affordability, looking at thousands and even driving that price point down to where you could actually get this in that household price point, because then it becomes a tool as opposed to this massive capital investment. And so as we like to say, look, if you're losing $4,000 a minute in downtime, if I could save you 3 minutes, you pay for this whole system.
Without a doubt.
And that's one of these new things that, in most robotics that are trying to take jobs, their metric of success is I replaced 1 worker this year. I want to save you 3 minutes of downtime with the talented workers you have.
And I shared with you before. I mean, a lot of people like to do more with less. When people hear more with less, somebody thinks, "Oh, I'm going to lose my job." But you're not trying to do that. What you're trying to do is allow each worker to do more with the same resources, with the same amount of time, with the same skill set. And in fact, you have that maintenance tech with this high skill set. There are certain things that may be able to be delegated. You can give something with a FlexBot, you can give it to someone with a lower skill set, okay, say, and maybe I want to go on vacation. Well, while I'm on vacation, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the FlexBot and I want you to go and I want you to inspect all of these pipes or these tanks or these ducts or this system or whatever it is, all these hard to reach places, and with any number of end effectors, right? Any number of things that you can do. All that can be done while I'm on vacation, and then I can come back and do the work that only I can do. Or I can multiply myself times 1.25 or 1.5 at a great affordable rate. And actually, we talked about it being an apprentice position. That's a great way to start developing someone as an apprentice.
Well, and then the corollary to that is you're on your vacation or it's Christmas dinner and something goes really wrong. And this tech, who is your apprentice, who 99% of the time can handle it, finds something, can they zoom you in?
Yeah, sure.
And get you that data. So get in and get that information. And really, in a lot of this, and there's a lot of hype around AI and robotics. And,
sure.
If we were going to break this down, there's structured. And there's unstructured. A warehouse or a factory is pretty structured.
Very
smooth floors, same thing every day. When things go wrong, it is unstructured, right? And all of this is unstructured.
It is.
And I think we all understand that over the course of time, we're going to get to where more and more things can use technology to assist and augment. But to even make that possible, AI is not plug and play. You need to train it.
You do.
And training is twofold. One, you need to get into this place to get the data, but you need somebody with expertise who knows what's going on. So we're at this critical junction in both workforce and technology, where you look at other nations like Japan, who's ahead of the U.S. in workforce issues, where birth rates are down, very, very skilled workers are retiring, and they never had the opportunity to train their replacements. So I remember when I managed all 35 houses, I could tell you every single house, every nuance about it. Oh, that's a 2-prong outlet, not a 3, because there's no ground. All of this institutional knowledge is tucked in my brain. And we're starting to see this with implementing Industry 4 software for maintenance and all of this. But then how do we have workers collecting data, analyzing data? So there's this opportunity with expertise that we're at this junction where we need your brain. There's no machine that can even replace that now.
Well, and the human intelligence is likely always going to far outweigh the artificial intelligence, except in certain areas, right? So artificial intelligence can take unstructured data and it can give us decisions, in essence, okay, give us answers, in essence, that we couldn't actually do.
Take a photo that you can't see anything in it.
Right.
An algorithm can see that there's 3 people
Exactly, right? Or it has the ability to, frankly, replace some things, okay? Less of that, because, if you've studied economics, you understand there's a replacement theory where you're going to backfill that with higher skilled jobs. But in the short term, that's exactly what happens. That's not what you're doing here.
Correct.
You are making the most of the human intelligence. You are making the most of the natural intelligence and augmenting that. The skill set, you're just saving time. You're eliminating downtime. And again, it's not just that. It goes beyond manufacturing. Insert crazy application, right? Insert futuristic application. Rocket ships, right? Those
He
things
jokes,
are not.
but I've had conversations with folks about this. Do you guys know what a CubeSat is?
I know exactly what a CubeSat
Imagine
is.
a toaster in space. Well, guess what? Your toaster in space needs a robot arm. Here's a 300-gram link. That could be your little robot arm or your toaster, right? So we have, and a lot of this is in the startup world. It's not infinite potential, right? The Swiss Army knife is the curse of a startup technology in a lot of ways, of infinite possibility, but what's the first thing you're going to do? And that's really been, in my journey, having to go from construction real estate, over to industrial facilities and manufacturing maintenance, where do you start, right? Why am I not starting with rocket ships yet? Well, back to our downtime thing. Downtime in manufacturing, that's dollars per minute, right? And that's where there's a hair on fire problem. And also, the more it costs you for this problem, the more you're willing to pay up front. So whereas manufacturing, industrial facilities, and we've also been doing work in defense that's analogous to this, they have this critical problem that they're willing to pay for today. But going to construction, real estate, and even when we're talking about the mass adoption of this down the road, there's only so much you're willing to pay on a Christmas gift. Right?
That's true.
So we need to hit that price point of, if every one of you out there is going to have one of these, you're probably going to buy it from Home Depot or Amazon, not do a purchase order with me. And we have those orders of magnitude of, well, the price isn't published, you can't afford it.
Right.
Well, we're at least, talking about our prices. So some of you out there, and then comes scale, but then with pricing and technology and ease of use comes moving to lateral markets.
Yes.
So you're able to take this, and then whether you want to adapt it for something, or we've done a lot of work. A big area we do work in the past, and we're kind of getting back into, is building envelope retrofits. So the outside of structure, and we were talking about this home being old, and so the average structure that's on Earth today is still going to be here in 50 years. And the energy usage of buildings is massive. Homes, all of this. So how do we make retrofits? So whether it's sealing the outside of your building or adding insulation where it's collapsed. So we had won a couple of prizes from the Department of Energy on minimally invasive building envelope retrofits. And now you're starting to see a lot of, whether it's New York State's NYSERDA, they're investing in this. The Department of Energy has a new program coming down right now that I had 2 different calls about today, with 2 different groups that want to use the FlexBot for 2 different things to solve the same problem. Now these are 2 to 3 years out, which is where grants and research dollars come in, is we can start working on the technologies we're going to need for tomorrow, today. But as a startup, where can we build immediate value? And it's with this greatly skilled technician who understands their problem inside and out, and is leaping for something that finally meets them with where they are, as opposed to, and again, no disrespect to a lot of these technologies, but a lot of manufacturing robotics does nothing to help the maintenance tech.
Nothing.
And frankly, they don't even do the maintenance on it. They have to call in the outside third party a lot of times.
And they bring in the engineers.
Right. Pick whatever color it is. You go through your systems integrator that maintains that, or your automated warehouse. A lot of these big warehouses have a member of the company that installed that thing there 24/7. Because that's what's needed. But you have, in most facilities, just a maintenance tech who's trying to curse less and get more done, go home with their family, and hit those goals. And like, what's interesting, right? Value chain. You have the maintenance tech who is, you pick about that TV show or whatever, where it's like the person who just runs things. It doesn't matter where they are in the org chart. The maintenance person is what decides what does and doesn't happen.
Get that line going. No, sir. No, Mr. CEO. Sorry. If you do that, you're going to destroy your machine and potentially hurt your workers. No, we're not doing that.
Right.
Wait a minute. Don't you work for me? Not right now, I don't.
Right. They're that super cop that you see in the dramas. But then you have the operations folks, the VP, the number counters, who are looking at that maintenance, and more as data has been presented to them, they're understanding that we need to invest in the infrastructure we have. Maintenance, preventive maintenance. 80%, do you need to buy a new machine, or do you have to take it from 80% uptime to taking it to 100% uptime is going to have a 25% increase in output.
Taking it to 100% uptime is going to, but exponentially, you're going to need to find a way to cut those costs, right? Because that becomes asymptotic, and it's exponential growth in cost. So, and the thing is, we're looking so far ahead, talking about this being in the home, but in reality, in creating a new categories create new categories. What's more than likely is that in creating a new tool like this, that's so flexible, so agile, has so many great applications, someone like the Department of Energy understands that not only do we solve the energy problem, we also create new industries, people who will go around and fix or mediate or solve those energy problems, and they need the FlexBot to do it.
Precisely.
That's what they understand. So they're not doing this just so that they can save energy. They're doing this so they can save energy and so that they can create new industry. New categories beget additional new categories that surround them and grow up from them, and that is why we don't still live in caves.
Well, and it's so funny to talk about the energy side. So a couple weeks ago, I was out, thanks to the DOE, at NREL, the National Renewable Energies Lab, out in Golden, Colorado. And so we had won that eRobot prize, and so they brought us and a couple other prize alumni to meet with it was interesting. You had investors, you had startups, you have the government, you have all these interesting folks in there. But we talk a lot about renewables, and there's people who feel one way, there's people who feel the other way. But think about something like grid scale solar. The maintenance on that is a whole new industry.
Yes.
That is coming out of this.
Yes.
So while for certain individuals, I feel bad for you that this thing that you thought you were going to get a golden watch doing disappears out from under you, and I don't wish that upon anybody. But I was talking. So there's all these new technologies, but we also have to. I was talking with a railroad inspection company earlier this week, and I don't know if last time you stared at trains. Maybe I nerd out more than others on this, but have you seen a caboose on a train recently?
No.
The caboose used to have people whose job it was to sit in the caboose. Now it's replaced by this little box with a blinking light on the back of a train. Wow. And that's what the caboose is. I mean, I say now. This is a couple decades.
Right. Of course.
But this notion of it's easy to blame the technology of today for workforce shift, but we've seen this over the years, whether it's
absolutely
looms that are, before there were CNC, they used to use punch cards to make looms automatically weave, right? So we've been seeing automation in this grow in these industries, and we've had to see this shift. So I think what's important is working with folks on how do we upskill, right? And that's something that like the FlexBot affords. Doing work with the Navy of late and going to some of their shipyards, and they're telling me about issues they have a new workforce that's all different shapes, sizes, you name it, and they don't fit where they need to fit. And to be inclusive, they're hiring everybody, which is great. But how do I enable you who doesn't fit down this canal to do that job instead of having to call somebody else back 5 times? So there's this opportunity, and I'm not saying I'm the one who's the only one addressing this in life.
Right.
But there's a lot of opportunity for us technologists to not only take those whose jobs still exist and make them better, but for those who are changing industries or even working to create new industries, upskilling, giving you a new tool, or giving you a way that you can build on this and grow an idea and become, I mean, look at what drones or drone affordability has become for folks.
Absolutely.
The number of people flying their own drone to do inspections for people and all. Here's this whole industry, whereas it used to be, do you own a helicopter? No? Well, then you're not an aerial inspector. Now, can you borrow $1,500 from a friend and take a 1-week course?
Yep.
Then now you're a drone inspector and you can grow from there. And so the affordability and usability of technologies does have this opportunity to increase the number of people joining industries as well.
And that's exactly right. And when you talk about reskilling and upskilling, all of those of us who've been out in the working world for quite some time, most of us know that you rarely finish where you started. You get in, you start, your career evolves, you learn new things. I'm an engineer doing sales and marketing, folks, and podcast. Who'd have thunk, right? I mean, that's just one tiny, tiny, less significant example. And so it's not that, I mean, my family member had one job, recently had his 90th birthday.
Wow.
90 years, X number of months, X number of weeks, X number of days, hours, seconds, blah, 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 blah. The bottom of the sign that was hung up should have said one job. That just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. It's not realistic. We have to be evolving. And honestly, that's the way to go into your career. The way to go into your career is that I need a foundation for learning so that I can learn how to learn, so that I'm going to figure out someday what I'm going to become. And you never envisioned yourself doing this. You were just out trying to make a solution, okay? And here you are with a robot in your hand.
Well, and I think that you hit a really important point there. Last week I was out in Pittsburgh for a couple of events, one of which was the Pittsburgh Robotics Network had their Robotics Discovery Day, which was an opportunity. There's 100 robotics companies and adjacent companies out there, and they brought a lot of the school groups in. So all these students, and I sat down to eat lunch at a table, and a guy sits down next to me as a teacher, and he's doing IT with the kids and all this, so it's a technical high school. and talking about jobs and ChatGPT and the future of this, and talking about programming, and to that notion of, as I said to him, knowing what has to happen and why it's happening and what the function has to do. So teaching people how to think about it, how to put the fingers to the keys and type the code. Well, that's right. Filling in the gap is where we're going to start seeing automation. But having that ability to ask why, how, should I, what's the value prop, all of the human factors, the defining of the problems. Those are things that automation is going to lag for the foreseeable future. And so I'd say to that notion of, making yourself adaptable, it is important that, learning the skill of doing something is great, but as my grandfather used to say, the smartest person in the room is the one who knows there's a problem in the first place. Right? So being able to identify, there is a problem here. Oh, here's where we have to go. So I think that critical thought is that one skill that humans will hold for a long time, and is a great opportunity for those, even in the classroom, of, if you're in a technical learning, right? Let's look at electricians, right? You start as the gopher, just picking stuff up. Then you're the apprentice. Here, I wired this. They drop the outlet everywhere. Go put the screws on. But learning, well, why do I need a box every 2 feet? Or why is this wire yellow instead of this one being orange and this one being white?
Hey, guess what?
Sorry, I wasn't ready.
Well, you're ready now, right?
I'm ready now.
Okay, cool. You know what? Battery died. So here we are with a violent cut, okay? And we're going to pick up where we left off. So the smartest person is the person who figures out you have a problem in the first place. And you had me thinking when you said that. The second smartest person is the one who knows who to call to fix it, right? But
that's Clint Eastwood. A man's got to know his limitations.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Dirty
brother.
Harry said it best. You got to know when to tap out and call for that expertise.
I think we have a pull clip for the start of the episode, because if it involves Dirty Harry, I'm in. So, anyway, let's start to wrap this up. Okay,
Sorry about that out there in watching land, but
it happens, right? That's why you bring extra batteries. Always be prepared. You Boy Scouts have got it right. But so we're winding up here because we've been at this quite a long time. Actually, we've been having a lot of fun between the chat and the tour and seeing the FlexBot, and wow, there's just so much. So do you have any final thoughts for the folks?
Yeah, so appreciate anybody who's made it this long, you taking the time here. I wouldn't be an early stage startup founder if I didn't say, hey, if you're a maintenance tech out there at a place that you're wondering how the heck do I get in here, I would love to meet you. And so Chuck was asking me, do I have any trade shows or anything lined up? And after about 5-6 months on the road this year, doing most of those shows, for the rest of this year, it's focused on some of our early adopters and pilots that we have kicking off. But I'm trying to get into these plants right now, whether it's a manufacturer, high availability industrial facility. We're here to learn about you, right? Because I want to understand your story, and I want to understand what downtime and maintenance and all of that means to you. And I don't know what you do and who you are out there, but I want to hear that story, because for us, I just want to learn. And yes, I'd love to come and visit you with the FlexBot and do a demo and learn about this and say, hey, are there some opportunities out there? And maybe we do a pilot, maybe things go from there, or maybe I have a heck of a good story.
Absolutely.
But for me out there, I'm here to learn about this downtime maintenance and empty those swear jars and solve that problem I've always had. And I look forward to the day that each one of you can call me and say, I want a FlexBot, I could send it to you. But until then, it's been a heck of a journey. I've been on some pretty cool places. I can tell you I've been on 2 aircraft carriers because that's public knowledge this year. So, aircraft carriers, manufacturing. I was at a top 5 parcel company last week. They were showing me things. So 5-year-old me loves my job, and I'd love for you to take me some cool places out there in podcast land.
Awesome. And for all my manufacturing friends out there, and there's a bunch of you in my audience, you know who you are. And this is definitely something new for you to check out and to, spread the word, because it's not about helping Matt. It's about helping the people that you talk to every day, because that's really what it's about. That's the dream. That's the passion. That's the mission of Flex Solutions and the FlexBot.
Chuck's hired. He could be our spokesperson.
You're a pretty good subject matter personality, Matt. I don't know. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chuck for the Revenue Fuel Podcast. On behalf of my friend Matt Bilsky and Flex Solutions, we are out.